Wonderful. I think we're good to go, Lee.
Yep, looks like we are. That's great. So good afternoon, Megan and Shauna. Appreciate you showing up to our conversation here. I'm not going to call it a webinar at this point since there's a few of us, and welcome Deborah as well. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be speaking about stewardship and how to build an effective stewardship program. And this will be the next steps and the next level of a little bit of a deeper conversation from one that our colleagues Patrick and George gave to you, I believe, a month or two back. So the structure for today is we do have a PowerPoint presentation, but we encourage you to raise your hand at any time to ask questions. We'll be switching back and forth to presenters, and we will be putting it up on the screen. What we will be doing is we'll do a bit of a recap about what you may have already learned about, and then give some examples and walk through some of the stewardship best practices, especially as they relate to schools and smaller organizations, not giant things like U of A or the Canadian Cancer Society. These are going to be as specific as possible. And if you have questions or you have a specific context you'd like to discuss, let us know. Be as open as possible, because then we can give you the best opportunity to have a good experience here. So my name's Lee. I've been working with BNP Inspire since 2009 on and off through some of their Ontario-based companies. And I've been worked in the education sector at a couple of different universities across Canada, a couple of different colleges, and I was an instructor at Georgian College in their philanthropy program for 7 years. And then I'll just give it to Richard now to introduce himself.
And thank you. And again, welcome everyone. We do appreciate your time for joining us today. My name's Richard Plummer, and I'm probably one of the more newer, more recent consultants who have joined BNP. My background spans, quite a few decades working in the non-for-profit and healthcare sector, working with whether it's educational partners at the community level or post-secondary education level as well. I've had the opportunity to work with organizations such as the YMWCA, which I think rings a bell with most people, and McConnell Family Foundation and United Ways. And so I'm glad to be here and looking forward to having a conversation with everyone. I think one of the things Lee had made reference to as part of the just the logistics for the day, in that I think it was confirmed that we will be recording this meeting as well, and both the recording and the presentation will be sent to everyone post the session today. So just to confirm that you'll have the resources afterwards as well.
Great, thanks. Thanks. I'm just going to share my screen right now. Perfect, making sure that's working. Excellent. Okay. So again, we're from BNP Inspire. This is the new company logo for our organization. The organization's been around a long time and has worked with different ones such as BNP Goldie, the Goldie Company. We were called BNP Performance, but this is our newest and best iteration. Mostly because of people like Richard, come on board. So we'll be talking today about steps to building an effective stewardship program, not just, thank yous. It's got to go beyond thank yous. And why are we uniquely qualified for that? Well, BNP Inspire has been around a while. We're one of the only certified B Corporation fundraising entities around. We act always with ethics, innovation, impact, dynamism, commitment, and of course with humanity. all of our consultants and everybody we work with has experience outside and working in the trenches on the front lines in charities. And we know what many of the challenges are. And this is a great supportive team to work with. And I know that George and Patrick were able to give you some great stuff about the research that was conducted through our last large survey that we did across Canada. And so I'm just going to recap a little bit about that. Stewardship is the key. Retaining donors, quite simply, is more cost effective than acquiring new ones. The key to everything is understanding that these are people who are already committed to you. And so let's keep that commitment going. And in our survey, we did find out that many of our charities that we had lacked a structured donor recognition program. Everybody said thank you, but in terms of a plan and structure, very few people and organizations had that. Those charities that had the highest growth, both before, during, and after the pandemic, engaged their donors more frequently because they had better retention. And those companies that shrank or had lower growth had fewer donor interactions, resulting in higher donor loss. So those are the key points. When you interact with your donors outside of asking them, you retain them longer, and that's better for your charity financially. So, there's a lot of economic uncertainty out there. Charities have to adapt to this, and that includes donor fatigue, workplace shortages, staffing shortages, volunteering. There's a lot that's going on out there. And so the donor retention strategies really does help all aspects of things. Stewardship essentials, strong donor relationships lead to higher retention, increased lifetime giving, not just one-offs and increased giving. So one year someone gives $25, the next year they give $35. This is about lifetime giving, leading hopefully up to a legacy gift. So the key strategies are personalization, demonstrating impact. So not just saying thank you, but saying thank you, this is what your donation did, and year-round engagement, not just at Christmas time, not just at the beginning of a school year or during graduation, but year-round impact. And we also spoke a little bit, and you probably heard about the challenges of poor stewardship. So the lack of follow-up, is the donor leads to donor attrition, and the decreased long-term funding. And I think that's really important. Stewardship can be really important during a capital campaign, but ongoing funding, long-term funding, is really impacted by good donor stewardship.
Thank you for that, Lee. One of the things that's critically important as we begin to think about stewardship as a formal integrated component of our operating and business models, it's so important in today's, context, as we know with the rest of the institutions or organizations we work with, that evidence-based information, best practices, as well as data are becoming now, standard expectations for not only, how we make decisions and the direction we take to, operate our services. And obviously within philanthropy, it's becoming more and more critical to ensure we have those evidence best practices and data, but also as a way to continuously monitor and approach our work from a continuous improvement strategy. Because again, we know the audiences that we're looking to engage are becoming actually more sophisticated in many ways themselves with how they view philanthropy and their philanthropic engagement, and yes, their direct donations and gifts, but also about whether it's the results and the impact. And so to ensure that as an organization or as an institution, the philanthropic and advancement areas of our organizations are equally strong and well positioned to communicate those evidences and those data, similar to whether it's the finance department or the program services or the academic offices. They're all looking at data to validate, the work that they do and the results they're achieving. And I think it's incumbent upon us within the philanthropic sector and the advancement area to continuously advocate and bring forward some of the best practices and evidence to validate the work that we need, the investment that's required to successfully and professionally deliver on these types of programs, and to find ways that we can measure our results and definitely demonstrate the impact so that reinvestment and that recognition and that validation of the work that goes on becomes so critical, and really start to move away from sort of the old model that, fundraising or advancement or donor relations is all the fun work that goes on in the organization. There are some very intricate enterprise and business components that need to be factored into how our work is done. And so just to touch on some of these at a high level, we know that obviously there is a measurable return on investment with respect to stewardship. And I think that's a key aspect that we need to keep bringing forward within our organization internally and externally as well. And stewardship is one of the components that is the most effective way to secure, it may appear to be long-term funding, but it's to sustain that relationship that leads to those greater commitments, those greater levels of gift, and those opportunities to move donors, sponsors through a continuum of a relationship that deepens it and strengthens it. As Lee had mentioned, during some of the most challenging times, what we're going to realize and what organizations oftentimes realize is either how well they've done a stewardship program, or unfortunately, in many cases, how poorly they've delivered on a structured, fundamental stewardship plan or strategy. It's during those worst times that it becomes most evident, not during the good times. And so we know there are advanced strategies, and even these advanced strategies are now becoming almost standardized staples of how we need to deliver our programs and our services. And so really looking at digital engagement, not just jumping on the bandwagon to say that, we have all these available tools, but we have to selectively align them to the organization's, competency level, because these things do take time to learn and develop and to effectively manage and integrate into your work plans and your existing strategies. But also they can become very consuming. So you have to be selective with which ones are having the greatest impact for where you are at in your program and within your organization's kind of level and capacity at this time. And so be selective, but they can add tremendous value in helping to reduce, repetitive work, administrative work, and actually help to maximize and understand the work that you're doing, the return on the work that you're investing in. Donor segmentation is critical, and I think this is becoming more and more similar to many other businesses. We've got to really understand a bit more of a customization approach to who we're serving and who we're engaging. If we treat everyone, as a homogeneous group, then we're probably going to get, poor results or homogeneous results that don't allow us to continuously evolve and deepen and develop that relationship. Obviously, having a structured touch points, these have to be integrated into a systemized approach to how you do business. They can't just be reactive responses. They have to be scheduled and they have to be systemized so that they become highly efficient, but equally effective. And if they're not effective, then it allows you to continuously improve upon that. We know that no matter how many times people have been engaged with us as organizations or institutions, small, simple, and sometimes creative recognition moments really help to just maintain that connectivity. And in people's busy lives these days, as people are bombarded by information, creating ones that are short and sweet, but allow us to, definitely leverage those, appreciation moments and thank yous. And those are things that you can become creative with and engage a broader segment or a broader perspective of the organization and helping you create as well. And that includes some of the beneficiaries as well. Volunteer engagement, we know that there's a a progression within a relationship. And sometimes someone may start off as a volunteer and become one of your most consistent, significant donors, or vice versa. Someone may start off as a donor, but because, as the saying goes, they have time, talents, and gifts, there's other ways to engage them and deepen that relationship. So it's important. And we kind of go back to that segmentation strategy. I think that's one of the most important pieces that everyone should really start to develop and start to create a more refined approach to understanding their audience, because that's going to help you engage them more effectively as you try to take them or even retain them through a stewardship program. And obviously, we know with the automation and some of the technology that's available that we're definitely going to have tools to help expedite some of our outreach and our follow-up, help us more effectively identify and segment, the different donors and sponsors that we want to engage, and help to customize it in ways that, again, it doesn't have to be, overly burdensome, but, there are buckets of opportunities that you can create where you apply different technology to help maintain some of the tedious tasks and some of the scheduled tasks that allow you then to use your own time and your team's time more personally to target specific areas where you want to look at deepening that engagement with donors. Next slide, please. Obviously, donor retention is more sustainable than donor acquisition. I think, similar to what the HR department always, tells the organization that, when you have a staff person that leaves, it takes you 2 or 3 times the amount of costs to find a new staff. So retaining that staff person, is critical to organization success and deepening and strengthening the organization overall. And I think those same principles apply to donor relationships and donor acquisition. We all know the time it takes to, effectively and genuinely, build a connection point and open the door for that relationship with donors. And I think that's critical because, as you do that, you start to obviously strengthen the long-term viability of your advancement program or your philanthropic program that allows efficiencies to be generated from that as well. And so over time, there's often a case where it actually takes less time to maintain and less investment to maintain a donor than it is to obviously acquire a new one. And that time then, that time efficiency and cost savings can be definitely directed to other aspects of your work plan, your business model. So using multiple channels, obviously, to engage the donor is critical. People have short attention spans. People prefer different modes of communication, whether it's audio, visual. We know storytelling is critical, but even storytelling needs to be, concise and somewhat targeted to individuals' interests in that as well. And we know infographics are a great way just to keep people up to speed on the progression of either the campaign you're in, to keep that momentum going, keep people engaged, the impact that your organization is making, and the results that you're achieving collectively as an organization, as an institution. There are many different ways, and people obviously have their own preferences, but having multiple channels allows you to connect with people where they are at and how they like to receive information. Obviously, a call to action, we know that, and I believe this one starts internally right across the full, all the departments within any institution or any organization. That call to action for stewardship must be a shared responsibility. We know the advancement department or the philanthropic department has the lead role, but it definitely has to be embedded into who you are as an organization and a component of who you are as staff and staff teams and how you collaborate together, similar to all other programs, whether that's finances or programming and things of that nature. We know loyal givers. I mean, the evidence and the statistics are glaringly obvious, where they're indicating at this time even more critical than in the past. Retained donors actually do contribute a significant higher level of gifts over time. And oftentimes they can be the key individuals to give you access and connections to other donors who may not have given or may have given in the past and are not connected. So it's more than just their financial contribution that loyal donors can bring to the table. They can give you brand and kind of connection recognition within the donor audiences that are out there that you're continuously looking to engage. Next slide, please, Lynn. And then we know that, through the existing and probably even the past, 5 to 6 years, challenges that have begun to occur within the philanthropic department where, donor stewardship requires investment. It requires building skills and a team that's competent and consistent. And again, that's similar to any other component of the organization's enterprise. And so we know there are workforce challenges that are beginning to occur. So some of these stewardship, these investments in stewardship and best practices, they become even more critical during these times because, again, if you're struggling with any staff development processes, staff performance, or just even staff retention, having a strong systemized way to do stewardship and have that consistently in place allows you to adapt to those workforce challenges where people may come and go. But if the system is strong and the best practices are in place, that can help you weather through and maintain that continuity of that relationship with donors. And again, it's critically important as advancement staff and as philanthropic leaders that we continuously bring the evidence and data to the table, because as we know, that requires investment to continuously make our program stronger and be able to respond and adapt and innovate within the programs that we're delivering. And so, organizations obviously that have a well-structured stewardship program, it's very clear and the evidence is telling us that they have a stronger retention rate. And the converse is obvious. And then obviously we know that during, as I said earlier at the beginning, it's not, during good times that you necessarily realize how weak your stewardship program is and what you need to do, but it's during these most challenging times. And that's where you can have that competitive advantage in the market and that relationship strength with your donors.
Great. Thanks, Richard. So, we talked mostly about theory so far. These are things you should do. Here's some, good ideas, but want to talk a little bit about some real examples. Donors really do need to feel like partners, not just funding sources. If a donor feels like a checkbook, at best, that's all you're going to get is a check or MasterCard or however they do it, right? So, but if they feel like partners and not just funders, they can help you do some other things. So, for example, when I was working in Edmonton, we had a law firm that had done some really great work for us, and one of their partners, not the managing partner, a junior partner trying to help his way up, did a lot of work for an organization I was working with, the United Way out there. And he helped us out. He volunteered, he did calls. So we nominated him for a volunteer of the year, right? So he didn't win volunteer of the year for the city, but he was nominated. Did he come back and be a great volunteer? Yeah. Did the company keep sponsoring events? Certainly they did. Did they get other people involved? They really did, because they felt like they were partners in our organization and that we recognized them for what they were doing, not just for the checks that they were able to write. This really is, again, with personalized prompt and thank you, strengthen relationships. This is really good. There's a theory that you should say thank you right away, immediately. Now, that's part of the automation for many things. You'll be able to say thank you literally immediately. But run reports at least once a week on what donations have come in, even if you think just to double check and call people up and say thank you. The more you can hear a voice, the more you can see a face. That's personalization, and it's really going to matter. And donors do want to see how their contributions make a difference. Now, we don't want to have, a poverty zoo if you work in the social sector. But in education, you can talk, you can show some of the great things that are going on. Student projects. Social media is a great way to show science fairs. If you're doing a model UN or any of these other great projects that are out there, you can say, hey, you helped our organization do this. Here's the graduating class of 2026. Many of them receive scholarships. You can get right down to it in a respectful manner. Uh, Keeping in touch through updates. Schools have a great way of doing it because they have a school calendar. Use that school calendar to speak to your donors. We have a new year. We've got this many students coming in. We have a graduating class. We're at March break. All of these natural parts of what you're doing can be integrated into a stewardship and a fundraising program, whether it's exam time, or anything else. That's a really good part of doing it. And if you're able to bring donors in to some of the things you're doing, it's a great way of keeping them involved. Alumni organizations are really good for this. And so take some of the work that alumni organizations are doing in and change it just that little bit into fundraising will be helpful. And acknowledging donors based on their preferences really helps deepen relationships. I remember I worked when I was working at a hospital. We had a couple of donors who wanted to be anonymous, and I mean really anonymous. They didn't want their names even in our database, just because of who they were. But they also really were appreciative of what the healthcare facility did for them. And so when we sent out thank you, we didn't ever send out thank yous to them to come to our strawberry socials or our events, because we knew they didn't want it. They would be embarrassed to think that they were on a list that they weren't. But because they had religious affiliation, we sent them notes, small gifts to celebrate, their holy celebrations, and it was really appreciated because they knew it came from us to them in a private and personal manner. So all of this can be done, by the seat of your pants, off the cuff, but that doesn't work as well because you want to measure it. Richard spoke about, how many organizations and any type of financial institution has goals. And as fundraisers, you probably have goals too. And so your stewardship needs to be a part of that and have their, plans. So if you're offering visits, the events, personal meetings, they have to be scheduled. And so having a plan that says, I'm going to speak to one donor a week, we're going to have 3 events a year, and we're going to have tours of our construction of our new gym, let's just use that as an example. You need to schedule that. So having that as a plan so that you can integrate it with other people other than yourselves is really important. Think about having 3 to 5 personalized touch points per year. So if you send out a weekly or monthly newsletter, that's great, but that's really not a personalized touch point. What we mean by 3 to 5 touch points is that personalization, whether it's that phone call after a donation, after an event, a celebration that's outside of the organization, or just a random call because you may not know, as much about this person as you'd like, just to say, hey, going through some files, going through some reports, and I noticed that you gave your $500 again this year, and I just picked up the phone to say thank you. Do that on purpose. Schedule time in your day, schedule time in your week, in your month, in your performance review about stewardship. Because if you don't do it, it gets pushed to the side. And just like everything else, and you don't want to procrastinate doing stewardship because that one phone call is going to be way more effective than 3 or 4 follow-ups to an ask. The data-driven donor segmentation, understanding that behavior is really, really important. Again, get some of that deep thinking, whether you use AI, your own personal experience, but when is this person giving? Is this person giving at Christmas time, during another holy month, at the end of the year, graduation time, maybe something to do with their own business, rush gifts to be able to get it in for tax time. Understand the when, not just the how, and the how much. Having is the ability to segment your donors and understand that data can really be important, because when you see the patterns, you can sometimes ask questions that are really important, such as, "Hey, I notice you always give at the end of March. Why do you always give at the end of March?" Well, come out of Lent, come out of Ramadan, then those are important times to give, and you can do it then. And again, we're going to keep coming back to this. The digital tools matter. You've got them. They're there. Use them as best as you can. Ask as many questions of your database as you'd like to. Sometimes you'll get information you already know, and that's a great way of reinforcing it to your supervisors, reinforcing it to volunteers. But sometimes you get information that you don't understand, and you can start to ask questions about that. And it also allows you to personalize the outreach. One of the things that I tracked when I was at a hospital foundation was we took our mid-level donors, so donors who gave $500 at any one time, and we created a category for them that was different than our major donors and different than our regular donors. And so anyone who'd given $500 at one time got a specific phone call from a staff member. They received a letter and an invitation to an event. And they also were given the opportunity to participate in a survey. And this was a survey about how we ran our operations. We were able to track that, put in that these are the people who got it. We noticed there was a 38% better retention because we gave them the opportunity to do something else, and because we treated them a little different. And the average gift, I think, went up by 29% over the next 2 years. So we got a small increase and huge retention in the first year. And in the second year, there was a big jump in giving, and we really didn't lose any of those donors that we spoke to and did that personal outreach. That was really important for us. And so we used the digital tools to track it because we were able to prove our point that stewardship matters and saying thank you mattered to those donors at that certain level. So the talk about donor relations really is going to be familiar to anyone on this call when you think about alumni relations. So the mid-level donor strategies are really important. There's a fact out there, and I'm not sure if everyone knows it, is that those people who become your major donors, $5,000 or more, or $25,000 in a capital campaign, one of the biggest indicators is that at some point, usually their first gift or their second gift to you is over $500 in one shot or as a monthly donation. That's a simple fact. Why? Because $500 for someone who can afford $25,000 or even higher isn't a lot of money. It can be a quick thank you, and it can be a test. So those people who give $500 in a year, they usually have the capacity to give more, whether they're changing what they're doing or a legacy gift. It's a big important factor. So look at those mid-level donor strategies and segment it, not just your major donors for stewardship, but something for your mid-level donors. Encouraging legacy giving, those stewardship fosters plan giving and requests, because I'm not sure what it's like in your organizations, but many organizations only understand about 30% of the gifts they're coming in, that only 30% of those gifts are expected. If you take the time and do stewardship, you're going to get more answers to questions like, did you include us in your will? Have you thought about making a gift? As a donor, I give a lot of one-time gifts out. Whether it's a student asking me for funds or a friend doing a push-up challenge or grow hair on their face or something. I give money away that way. And I get thank yous and I get a lot of things like that, but there's no real true stewardship for me in most of those organizations because there's no plan, right? And they haven't talked to me about legacy giving, mostly because these organizations don't have a legacy giving plan. But if you have that legacy giving, it becomes a stewardship factor. That even promoting it, talking about it, and once you know that someone is a legacy gift, that changes everything. It changes how you speak to their children, to their themselves, and their grandchildren. Again, I remember working at an organization and I saw this family, pointing at the donor wall and they're talking about it and they had, they just seemed really happy. And I said, oh, well, is your name up there? And they said, no, that's my grandpa's name, right? I didn't realize he'd given a big gift. And so that was really neat because it started a conversation that we were able to have about continuing on a family tradition. So it's that stewardship, and nobody had spoken to this gentleman who is in a retirement home for many, many years, and then we were able to bring him in for a tour, and he ended up giving a naming opportunity that went beyond the initial really large gift that he had given in the past. So again, the stewardship can lead to legacy giving, can lead to naming opportunities. One of the things that I think is going to be just as important now as it was when we did the survey regarding COVID is the financial resilience. A lot of charities were saved by philanthropic angels who said, COVID's time is tough. I've got the ability. I'm going to help those organizations out. We're going to see the same as we move forward, whether it's election and political instability in Canada, whether it's Trump's tariffs that are coming down the pipe, whether it is our own restrictions on the amount of international students, cutbacks in the college system, reducing programs. There are still going to be people who care about what you do, and being able to steward those people and understand those motivations will make it give you the ability to have financial resistance. So it's understanding your donors and speaking to them. It's really is a great way of getting to the final point that I have, which is the advocacy and collaboration. This isn't enough to say thank you, to get a gift in, but it's that advocacy. Great donors can be a part of your annual report. They can give you quotes. They can be, they can co-sign things. Richard and I have worked in different organizations in the past where we've asked other charities to support our grants to organizations. And many of these people can become stewards of what you do in other ways. They can become board members, committee members, advisors, and really help you advance what you're trying to do. And in the end, they can also refer students to your schools if you're in a private school. So those are some of the ways that people can do some great things. When I worked at Trent University in Capital Campaign, our sector leader for our professional sector was not an alumni, and his daughter was not an alumni, but his daughter's best friend was an alum, and he realized that they had such a great relationship. He helped her out, come on board, and really liked the organization. And he ended up, his grandkids did end up coming to the school, but the ability for him to interact with his daughter vicariously in some way, shape, or form was really important. So Richard, want to talk a little bit about that, and I'm going to remind you to talk about that podcast and that webinar you were a part of.
Mhm. Well, we'll definitely will do that. One of the things we've listed here, and you'll get the report, is the 7 ways to say thank you, and I won't go through them in specific detail because I think both Lee and I have probably touched on them, and they're pretty logical as you look at them and kind of see what they're referring to. But I think what the key message here that I think is important for us to really think about as leaders within sort of our roles that we play is that we talked a little bit earlier about this evolving model and profile of donors, and we know donors. There's a change in the market. There's generational change. There's individuals now starting to reevaluate who and what they donate to and try to align it more to their own personal values. So that element around customization and segmentation is I think, going to be two critical pieces that you've got to tie into your relationship building process. So the key thing about, saying thank you is that the reality is, as organizations and as staff, we have limited capacity. So I think what's critical as you start to look at the other stewardship best practices, particularly the segmentation and some customization engagement points, your thank yous also have to somewhat be customized, and they can be foundational thank yous where how you have standard practices that everybody receives. But then as part of that progressive relationship building process, you have to start to strategically look at ways that you can move individuals through that experiential component. Because what do they say? People always remember how you made them feel at the end of the day. And so that's a critical piece. And reality is you can't do everything for everyone. So you have to start to look at both even your thank yous and the types of resources and time that you put into the different levels of engagement, and apply strategically specific thank you or engagement opportunities to recognize them at that stage. And Lee talks about sort of the podcast and event that we were part of. The example I'll refer to is as a relationship building process with one of the organizations I worked with, we identified, a corporation that was very interested in, expanding their accessibility and diversity, and it was Loblaws Corporation, and they had a corporate social responsibility strategy that they were struggling with, and it was a time when the market was probably putting some pressure on them around food security and that. But it didn't change fundamentally their commitment to trying to evolve their organization to be more philanthropic, to be more engaged in the community, and to be able to respond to customer needs. So what we were able to do with the mission from the Canadian Hard of Hearing Association, we were able to identify and align a relationship with them and work with them collectively on our goal of trying to expand our own mission and our mandate for our institution, but also support them in their corporate social responsibility strategy. And so we were able to engage with them around programming, public advocacy for accessibility, but then also engage Loblaws in actually becoming philanthropic in their own investments in creating a more accessible shopping experience for the customers that are our members, or the people that we served as an institution. So we were able to leverage, their sponsorship and donations to elevate our own organization's mission and mandate, and they had a much larger, substantial platform. What that allowed us to do by, recognizing their own corporate interests and aligning it with ours, we were able to actually expand both organizations' interests and engage, a tremendous amount of contact points within the retail sector that we ourselves would have never had the opportunity to engage. And I'll share with you specifically one of the measurable outcomes of that, alignment and dual recognition, and saying thank you to Loblaws publicly for their investment in supporting our goals and our mission. We were able then to be engaged with Shoppers Drug Mart. I think it's Canada's largest, pharmaceutical service retailer in Canada, who saw that and it rang a bell and connected with them. And we were able then to start a relationship and expand a philanthropic and donation and sponsorship initiative with them as well. And so by just providing that recognition of their own mandate, what they're trying to do, the results of their investment with Loblaws, we're able to exponentially engage more retailers in that. And now through that process, at the same time, though, it allowed us to engage other individuals who recognize that work. And we were able to engage them as donors and then have that relationship with them more one-on-one. So it multiplies the opportunity when you really look at recognition and thank you at a level that fits with the relationship you have with that organization. I'll share another example, with United Way when I worked there for many years, and some of you may be familiar with, I think they coined the term, it was called Seeing is Believing tours. We would have the opportunity to not only just thank donors, but engage them in understanding the value of that relationship. And so we were able to, identify donors at different stages of our engagement level to thank them and give them that experiential learning process of the impact and the value of their donation. So, one time it got quite grandiose where we would have school buses taking, tens of, or 100 people across the city engaging with our partner associations or even coming to our own organization to experience kind of storytelling and value propositions in that relationship of their donations and the gifts they're provided. That allowed us to build a whole wealth of other assets where they now became our ambassadors for our work. And they were then promoting our work and our cause to other donors that we were able to engage. So just looking at different ways that you can thank people, but realizing at the same time, you're not going to be able to thank everybody in the same way and all the time in the same way. So you have to look at your segmented relationships and start to apply specific thank yous that allow you to graduate that relationship and deepen it, and then determine at the same time if it's resonating with those donors or not. And that allows you to continuously improve your process and help to customize it so that it means the most for that individual based on the amount of time and energy you're putting into that relationship.
Great. Thanks, Richard.
I'll leave it there for now, Lee.
Yeah, well, I'll quickly go through the 7 ways because we are going to be sending this out. But again, this is really the conclusion. Say thank you in writing. It's that simple. Call them, let them hear your voice. Talk to them, whether it's you, program staff, your executive director. In some cases, students can be contracted to do this. The phone does work, not as well as it used to, but it does for individuals who've got a relationship with you. Thank them in public. If you can say thank you to someone who wants to be thanked in public, it's a great way of doing it. Thank them on social media. Find out what your donors are on. Say thank you. Send them little clips of things. Like I said, a simple message on Facebook or TikTok tagging someone can be really, really cool. We've used videos for a conservation association where there was a flooding. And the executive director went down to the stream in a safe manner, just sent it out to the donors and saying, hey, you know what, some of the conservation things you did, the banks are overflowing, but we were able to plant all those trees last year. We're not destroying the banks. So thank you very much. Really simple and incredibly effective way of doing things. And he just did it with a simple video. In-person visits, again, personalization. Tell them your story. The stories are important, whether it's videos, podcasts, testimonials, those personal narratives. Stats are one thing, but people remember stories. Okay. And have a donor wall. It's permanent. It's something that people care about. It's something the next generation can look at and point and say, hey, my grandma gave the funds here. Those are really, really important things. And this can be as complicated or as simple as you have the capacity to do. But remember, you're not in it alone. talk to us here at BNP Inspire. We can do donor audits, stewardship audits. We've got a lot of relationships, understanding, what are good donor walls, what are great perspectives to have. And we'd love, to have the opportunity to work with you to improve your stewardship opportunities. So if there's any questions, we'll take them now. We can have conversations about something specific or something as general as you'd like. So, please raise your hand, talk in the chat, whatever works for you. So I see someone's typing. That's good. Oh, thanks. Oh, thank you. You are welcome.
You're welcome.
Well, we'll give you back a few minutes of your day. It's getting into be 1 o'clock at this point, but there also is someone typing here in Ontario. But I would like to say thank you for coming to the session and for following up on your second exposure to BNP and what we do. And we'd love to work with you in the future. Have a wonderful day.
Yeah, thank you very much. Pleasure to meet everyone and look forward to following up if you have any questions.
Great. Thank you. Great. Everybody's gone except us, Richard.
And there we go. Well, again,
that was good.
Yeah, thanks for putting this together, Lee. It was very concise, and I like the visual presentation and the way you logically put it together. It helped the flow. Appreciate that very much.
Good. Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said. I don't think we repeated things too much.
Correct. Yeah.
But it was good. Great.
It will be very interesting. I mean, again, even our own time and strategy needs to be put into place. But, when you see a small group like that, I'm wondering if there's value in just, testing the waters to say, would they like to come to a 30-minute lunch and learn maybe in a month from now and just share, one or two of their most challenging, experiences and maybe help work them through just some tidbits and some best practices just to see if we can deepen that relationship a little bit. And it might give us some thought for how we operate our future, whether they're webinars or workshops or whatever they are, something like that,
I like that idea because you go to these great webinars or you go to a conference. And it would be great to have a follow-up a month later and say, so I know you learned something. We got great feedback. So what did you actually do?
Yes.
With the information we gave you? Because we want to hear about that. Absolutely. I think that's a great idea.
Or what didn't you do and how can we help you? Because, we're doing this for a purpose, not just to, run through the slides, but we want to see you, some results from your time here. And can we help to navigate you through that moment that you're struggling with? And it might just be, hey, listen, no one wants to listen to me at the boardroom. Well, here we go, right?
Yeah. And invite ourselves. I think that one of the things that we want to do is what can we do to steward, like using these same concepts,
yes, you're right.
Share this, call me if you want to do a presentation.
Thank you.
Give me 15 minutes in your board if you want to.
Yes.
If you want to have a budget of $50,000 for stewardship, just let me know and I'll come and back you up.
Yeah, exactly. Because how often it is, and again, we don't know the schools per se, but if we get insight into the school culture, we can start to even ourselves, as you said, customize our own stewardship. I love that reference to that, because that can be a game changer for these guys. Because you've been at different organizations, and depending on where the whole advancement or the resource development team fits in the relationships within the organization, it can be they're at the top of the heap, they're at the mid, or they're at the bottom, right?
Yeah. So
and
we should we should maybe put a little bit of pressure on the research team at BNP to see, how much of our new business is actually old business. How much of our stewardship efforts have, are 80% of our clients returning
Mhm.
clients, that type of things.
Well, it's true, and I've checked in on a few different areas around that. I know some of the statistics between transitioning, from the data from Goldie to BNP. I think BNP in Quebec has, from what I understand, has some pretty decent statistics or data that we can look at as models, but from Ontario and Canada, it might not be as detailed or as much. But we need to start that sooner than later. See what we have, and then put in a very simplified system to say, what is that tracking mechanism? You're right. I love it. Let's put our own stewardship principles to work.
Yeah.
Classic moments, eh?
Yeah. All right.
I
I have
love
an
it.
investment committee meeting I've got to get to right now.
Well, that sounds like more fun than talking to me, so I'll let you be.
Actually, it's not, but that's okay. Talk
Take
to you
care.
later, Richard. Thank you
Thank you,
again. Sorry.
Sari.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Richard. Bye bye.
Merci beaucoup.
Bye.